so let's get this toile finished, hopefully. Okay, so we've got the bodice put together. There's still some adjustments that need making on it, so I need to take in the upper back seams a little bit, maybe ½ inch, we'll see. And there is some stuff going on under the bust that needs fixing, but we're going to get the skirt on before we do that. So I'm going to take some measurements from the toile, which is why it's on the mannequin. So I'm going to take the length of the strap from where it joins at the front to where it joins at the back, and then save that for later, so I've got that when it comes to drafting out my sleeve pattern. I'm also going to take the measurement of the seam lines where the skirt is going to attach. So I'm going to do the side seam to the side seam for the front, and then the side seam to the zip seam in the back, so that I can then measure them against the pattern pieces, so that I can make sure that the seam where I stitch the skirt to the bodice is going to be the same length, because a bit of a pain if it doesn't. I'm also going to measure the length of the side piece of the lower bodice, so from the side seam to this under the bust seam, to see where that is, so that if I do decide I want to have the slit in the front, which I'm going to decide once I've put the skirt on the toile, to give me sort of a reference point as to where I might want to put it, because I'm thinking having the slit, having the seam in the front skirt to allow for the slit to match up with that seam is going to be nicer. I'm also toying with the idea of, do I need to move those seams in a little bit, but we'll work that out once I've got it on, because it may well be, once I've got the skirt on, that I need to unpick this section and adjust it anyway, in which case I may as well make any tweaks to these seams. I think it was okay when it was on. It's a bit hard to tell when it's on the mannequin, because obviously the mannequin is not my size and shape. I think the seams were sitting in a reasonable place when it was on, so I may not move those, but just looking at it on the mannequin, it does look like those are fairly far apart, but we'll see. So yeah, let's get to measuring and then checking the pattern pieces before I take them downstairs to cut them out, because I don't have space in here to do that. Okay, let's get the measuring tape. Okay, so I've made a note of the measurements just taken from the toile on the mannequin. So my strap length, so from where it's attached at the front to where it's attached at the back, so ignoring seam allowance, that was 16.25 inches. I haven't done the drop from there to where I want it to fall my arm yet, because I'm going to do that once I've got the toile on, so that I can measure from where the strap is actually sitting. Then the full front, so from the side seam to the side seam, that was 25 inches. The back to the centre was 9.25 inches. And the side seam to the seam underneath the bust cup, that's 7 inches. So that's going to give me some guidelines. So I'm going to use the full front and the back to centre measurement to check the waist seams on the skirt pattern pieces. So, I've only rough cut around them so far, because if I need to add to them, it's kind of helpful to have the paper around the edges to do that. So yes, I'm going to check that waist seam and make sure that it matches what I've got on the bodice, allowing for seam allowances, which aren't included in those measurements. And we'll go from there. So once I've got the waist seam to the length that I want it to be, I can then work out where I'm cutting the skirt panels width-wise, and then we can take them downstairs and get them cut out. Okay, so ironing board as table, here we go. Okay, so let's move that rusty bit out of the way. Okay, so this is the back piece of the skirt. So this is the zip seam to the side seam. I'm going to use the back panel to show you what I'm doing, because it's smaller and it's more likely to fit on the screen. So the cut line is here for the largest size. See if I can shift you over a little bit more so you can see a little bit better. Hopefully that's showing up. So yeah, so the cut line is there for the largest size. So I'm going to start by measuring the largest size. Now this pattern is drafted with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, so I actually will be measuring it 3/8 of an inch down from the top, and I'm going to want it to be 6/8 of an inch wider than my measurement from my bodice, to allow for seams. So I'm sort of eyeballing the 3/8 of an inch down from the cut line, and I'm standing my tape measure on its edge because it's a curved seam line. Okay, so that is coming in at just under 10.5, so 10 3/8. So that is certainly larger than I need it to be. So let's do a little bit of maths. So 10 and 3/8. And we want, that'll be 6/8 of seam allowance. So if we take off, that's one seam, so that gives us 10. So 8, 7, 5, that's 9 and 5/8. Okay, so that's a little bit longer than we need it to be. Let's have a look at the next size down. So that's coming in at 10. So 10 take away 6/8 is going to be 9 and 2/8, which is 9 1/4. Okay, so that's helpful. So my back piece I can cut out at the second largest size, and in theory that should fit my bodice. Now that's interesting given how my body measurements matched up to the pattern description. I'm putting that down to I am sewing this garment up with less positive ease than was drafted into the pattern. So that's why the size I thought I was going to need isn't the size I actually need. So I'm going to do the same to the front piece and work out if there's a size already there that will work. And if not, I'll have to do a bit of grading. So, yeah. And obviously if I mess this up, it is only fabric. I can cut and add more or take stuff out, that kind of thing. Okay, so front panel. Okay, so I need 25 inches, so I need us to measure 25 6/8. And I don't think we're going to be anywhere near. Just remeasuring to make sure. But it seems to be a few inches down. Yep, that's coming in at 21 7/8, which is a really random measurement. We'll call it 22. So we need to add on 3 6/8. So 3 6/8 to add to front skirt. The easiest way for me to do that is going to be to cut straight up the middle. There's a helpful straight line here that I can cut up and add in about a strip of paper that is 3 6/8 wide into the middle of the panel. So I'll do that, and then we'll go and get the fabric cut out for the toile skirt. Okay, so I've cut out the largest size of the front panel of the skirt, and then I've cut straight up the centre front line and inserted this strip. So they're 3 6/8 of an inch apart now, and taped down. So I need to smooth off the hemline and the waistline where that additional width has been added, and then we can get that cut out ready for toiling. Once I've got the full skirt on, I'll decide if I want a slit and which side I want the slit on and where I want the slit, that kind of thing. But first of all, we need to make sure it fits. So I'll get this cut out of fabric, and then it'll be time to sew. Okay, so we've got the skirt pieces cut out, but the toile fabric wasn't quite wide enough for the front skirt, so I'm going to do a bit of piecing there. So first step is to sew on the pieced bit of the front of the skirt. So I'm not overly concerned about it in terms of fitting it, because it's the hemline that's missing the piece, but just in terms of sewing things up evenly so I can get a good sense of length and fit and all that kind of stuff, I want the whole thing to be there. So yeah, so we're doing a bit of piecing. Hopefully I won't have that issue with the final fabric, but we shall see. So yeah, so I'll sew on the pieced bit, sew the front panel and the back panels together, and then attach it to the bodice and see where we're at. So for the purposes of piecing the front skirt, I've just pinned it on top. I haven't worried about right size facing or anything like that. Obviously, if I was going to be doing this with the final fabric, I would be thinking about which sides are touching each other. But for the purpose of toiling, I just need it attached. So I'm just putting the pieced bit on top of the non-pieced bit, and I'm just going to sew a line of stitching through it. And that'll do the job. Okay, so we'll get that done, then we'll get on to the side seams. It always helps when you're pinning things on if you match the correct seams with the correct bits. I was wondering why my back bodice seemed a bit short. It's better. When I sew this on for the toile, because obviously I haven't attached the zip to the skirt pieces, but I have to the bodice, what I'm going to do is just avoid that bit when I stitch them together until I put the zip into the skirt. Obviously I'm going to be reclaiming the zip when I do the final one anyway. Okay, so we've got the dress put together. I haven't pressed the skirt seams, but I'm okay with the length. It's quite a good length for the sort of dress that I'm looking for. The skirt is cut on the bias, so it sort of drapes quite nicely. I do think I'm probably going to put the slit in now. Probably I need to sew whether on the left or the right. Probably do sort of knee height, sort of just over the knee. And I'm thinking in line with this seam that runs underneath the boobs. Length before hemming is pretty much mid-calf, so I'll just do a narrow hem and we'll be good to go there. I've taken in the back seams a little bit, and I think it's a much better fit. And obviously if I do extreme moving, there's going to be a bit of gaping, but it's because things move. So the back I'm fine with, the skirt I'm fine with. I just need to sort the slit out. But this area under the bust, I don't know what's going on there. Things are clearly not the right shape, the right length. The seam under the bust is sitting out from the body a bit, so I think the depth at that point in the cup is not right. And I think that seam maybe needs to be taken in a little bit there as well. And the shape in the middle isn't right. So I need to have a little think about that. Yeah, I'm going to leave obviously the sleeve drafting until I've got the bodice right, because I want to make sure I'm measuring the right bits for fitting that on. But yeah, something's not right in this section of the bodice. If I come a little bit closer, you might be able to see a bit more. So I've got all sorts of wrinkling and pulling going on in this area. I've got excess fabric here. So I mean, that's clearly not right. And I could try pinching a bit out there. I don't know if that's necessarily where the issue is being caused from. So let's try popping a pin in there. So there's a reasonable amount of excess fabric there. These seams I'd rather they were sitting closer to the body. I'll try pinning that there. Well, let's put it the other way around so I'm not stabbing my boob. I don't want to stab pins in my boobs. See if I was doing anything weird to the side seam. Side seam still seems fairly straight, so that might be the answer. Taking those in there. Because I can slant those seams. That actually pulls the underbust seam a little bit more under the bust. But it's still not quite the right shape because it's sitting away, sort of partway up the boob here. Just not quite what I'm going for, but if I take that out, yeah, that truly is just excess fabric there. So the side seam is still pretty straight there. pretty straight there. I mean, there is still some pulling and wrinkling and things going on, but I've just managed to pull that pin out. But yeah, so what I think I'll do is I'll take in these seams a little bit. So we're looking at about 1/2 inch. So I'll take them in at the top, and then we'll see where we're at with the bodice fit after that. Okay, so this is where we're at. I've put the slit in, gone with a couple of inches over my knee, and I'm going to achieve that by splitting the skirt into 2 panels. So there'll be a seam coming up here, so I can adjust the length of the slit as I'm sewing at the final version. So skirt I am happy with. The bodice, I did make some improvements. I'll just come a little closer again. So I've taken in the top of these seams, and that's now sitting much better, and I just stitched down where the excess fabric was in the middle, so effectively put a little dart in. And then I've pinned the middle a bit closer again. I think that's better too, because it's pulling the boobs forwards. So there's still some more work that I want to do on the bodice, but I want to do a little bit of a read around and look into that to see if I'm doing things in the best way, because it's not right, the shapes aren't right, and it's not sitting where I want it to sit, and this volume keeps popping up in various different areas. I don't think it's a million miles off, but you can see where I've pinned it, there's all sorts of pulling going on, so it's not right. So that I think might be a weekend job, which will obviously be after you guys have watched this video. And when I'm redoing the bodice, I will then redo the strap sleeve situation as part of that toile process. Okay, so I know this video is a little bit shorter than last week's, but that's partly because time for sewing is not always the same every week. So I'll come back to this project I set over the weekend, over next couple of weeks. But next week's video will be what I've been working on in February roundup. So it's going to be a couple of weeks at least before you see more of this project. And by that point, I should hopefully, fingers crossed, have worked out what the heck is going on with the bodice and worked out what to do with the sleeves. There's a couple of different options for the sleeves. My initial idea was to essentially use the length of the strap and do like a semicircle flutter sleeve, almost like a cape type thing, and not have it go under here. But looking at flutter sleeves on other patterns, they do seem to be like go all the way around the arm side. So I need to do a little bit more looking into that to work out how to draft the sleeve that I'm thinking of, which would be in lace on the final project. And yeah, I need to do a bit of looking around and tweaking of the bodice. So that's this weekend's job. Then once that's sorted out, I can get it into the final fabric. So at some point in March, I will have the finished dress for you. It's been a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be, and it's because of this cup situation. If I'd have actually finished making bras, or actually got a bit further with making bras than I have, I suspect it would have been a lot easier. But I don't think we're that far off. This seam is sitting a little bit better now that I've taken in the top of those seams. I have marked on where my boobs are sitting against the fabric, so I can think about whether I want to adjust that. So yes, there are a few little tweaks that I want to make. With that in mind, I'm just going to mark where these pins are on the fabric, because they might come out when I take the dress off, and then I won't have the marking for where to cut things down to. Okay, so I'm just marking with red biro. What I will do before I take the dress off is just before I take the dress apart to use for the pattern, is I'll put some little marks on, registration marks for matching up the seams. So things like here, where I'm going to have the seam for the slit in the skirt matching up the seam under the bust, I'll put a little line across there, across the two sides of the seam, and that'll be basically my notch marks. For instance, centre front to be another one. So little marks like that, where it might be useful, just to register things up. So the side seams on the skirt, the back seam on the skirt, basically where the zip's going to be, that kind of thing. So I'll do that before I take it apart. So yeah, a couple of weeks more at least on this project. I used to be somebody who tried to get a project all sewn up in one go, but so I'd cut it out one day, sew it up the next day, job done. But to get the better fit, to get the more interesting details in, it does take a bit longer to get these things done. I do need to have it done by the end of March because the lace is a Minerva brand ambassador fabric, so I needed to get a post up for them by that point. So I do have a bit of a deadline with this one. But once I've got the toile sorted, the actual sewing up of the dress should be relatively straightforward because the sizing and the fit and all that sort of thing will be done. I am now out of this colour of toile fabric, so that's a plus. So yeah, the next bodice toile will be either in a light grey or a green. So yeah, right, so that's that. I'm just going to stop waffling because I'm just stringing words now. I will see you next week for a roundup of what I've been working on in February, and in the meantime there is this video here that may be of interest to you. I will see you next time, but until then, happy crafting and bye bye for now.